All right, right now, man, we are exposing Dave Ramsey and Robert Kiyosaki, two of the very, very most well-known people in the finance space about debt. Let's check out what bro has to
In
say.
today's video, let's answer this very important question. Is all debt bad? And should you avoid it? So Dave Ramsey says that debt is always bad and it should be avoided. Robert Kiyosaki says that there's good debt and there's bad debts, and you should load up on good debts to become rich.
Now, low key, just looking at these two, I'm gonna be honest. When someone uses these always and absolutes, a lot of times it's probably just for clicks and views. But honestly, a lot of times, man, I think Dave does kind of operate like that, which not everyone agrees with.
So I want to show
But
you these videos.
also, even the backstory, Robert Kiyosaki, man,
Clips of
that's
Dave
that's a whole
Ramsey and
nother
Robert
thing.
Kiyosaki, and then I'll give you my opinion on debt, which is completely different than Kiyosaki and Ramsey. And let's start with Dave Ramsey. So please take a look.
You're not going on vacation. You're in debt. You're broke. You're not going out to eat. You're in debt. You're broke. You work all the time. You're in debt. You're broke. There's a great place to go when you're broke, to work. Okay? This is what you do. And you bust your butt. And it's scorched earth. No lifestyle. No nothing. You sell so much stuff the kids think they're next. You name the dog eBay and the cat Craigslist. Everything's going out the door. We're getting this mess cleaned up.
He's going
We're
crazy.
sick and tired of being sick and tired. People that do it with that intensity get out of debt in an average of about 18 to 24 months.
So as you can see, Dave Ramsey is clearly anti-debt. Now, I want to show you Robert Kiyosaki's opinion, which is completely different than Ramsey's. So please take a look.
Well, there's two kinds of debt. There's good debt and bad debt. Good debt is debt that somebody else pays off for you. So when I buy an apartment house with my friend Kenny, I don't pay for it. The bank lends us the money and debt is tax-free, right? So let's say we put $1 billion down to buy a $5 million apartment. So we now have a $5 million asset and our tenants pay for it. That's good debt. But I take out my credit card to go eat sushi, that's bad debt because I got to pay for it. And it's that simple. Now, this is basic financial education or financial literacy, they call it.
So Robert Kiyosaki says that there's good debt and there's bad debts. So if you know his work, he explains it like this. He says that good debt
Both sides.
is
I mean, you
debt
don't pay
that generates income to you.
taxes on the debt.
So an example of that is if you get a loan to buy an investment property. He says that bad debt is consumer debt. So a very straightforward example of that is if you're in credit card debt. So Kiyosaki says that good debt helps you get rich, bad debt makes you poor. If you want to get rich, load up with good debt. So Kiyosaki brags that he's over $1 billion in debt. Now, I'm going to give you my
Nah, $1 billion is crazy. Like, I mean, with him, he probably has so much money that it won't keep him up at night. For a lot of people, I don't think they could do all
opinion
that.
towards debt, and it's completely different from Ramsey. It's different from Kiyosaki, and I'm going to explain it to you like this. So this is actually how I explain it in chapter 5 of my book regarding debt. Okay, so Dave Ramsey says that debt is always bad, and you should stay out of debt, right? And Robert Kiyosaki says that there are good forms of debt, and you should load up on it, right? So first, let's answer this. Is debt good or bad? My philosophy is that debt is always bad, but stay with me because it doesn't end there. So debt is always bad. However, if the benefits outweigh the drawbacks, it may be in your best interest to take on debt. So let me explain. So in chapter 5 of my book, I explain it with this analogy. You getting punched in the stomach is a bad thing, right? But what if you were offered $1 million to get punched in the stomach? If you decide
that's
to
an
take
interesting
the
way to
deal,
look at
it
it.
does not change the fact that getting punched in the stomach is a bad thing. You know, getting punched in the stomach still is a bad thing. You're only agreeing to getting punched in the stomach because you believe that the pros outweigh the cons, that $1 million is worth getting punched. Now, it's the same thing with debt. If you take on debt to make you money, let's just say student loans, a business loan, money to invest in rental properties, etc.
So it sounds like his philosophy is as long as, it comes out net positive, then it's fine. But if it's a net negative, then you probably got to think twice
That
about it.
debt, it's always going to be bad. However, I'm not saying don't borrow money. I'm just saying that you should only borrow money if the pros outweigh the cons and if you can handle the risks that come along with it. But that's the thing. You must analyze the situation well. For example, if someone offered me $1 million to get punched in the stomach, then I would want to know the details, assess the risks involved, and think of worst case scenarios, such as who's punching me. Is it going to be Mike Tyson in his prime that's going to punch me? Because
Imagine, man. Nah, you're going to have to go to the hospital right after that.
if it is, then I wouldn't take that punch because that punch would most likely kill me, in which case, it's not going to be worth it. But that's the problem with people taking on debt, because many people ignore the risks, they ignore the dangers, and they get blinded by the pros and they don't consider the cons. So you really need to see the risk to reward or the pros and cons. So I want to give you a real life example. So let's just say that you came across an extra $5,000. Maybe you got a bonus at work or a big tax refund, whatever it may be. Let's just say you're $5,000 richer. And let's say with that money, you can either pay down your mortgage that has a 2.75% interest rate, or you can put it in your Roth IRA, which has been earning you an average of, let's just say, 8% a year. Which one will you choose? Pay down debt or invest it? Personally, I would rather put the $5,000 into the Roth IRA because the expected rate of return
It's going
is
to be
much
more.
higher. So sure, in the short run, that money in the Roth IRA, it may return less than 8%. However, a guaranteed 2.75% is just too low. I'd rather keep that low interest rate debt and try to make more than 2.75% a year. But now let's change the variables. What if your mortgage interest rate was 7%? In this scenario, I would rather put that $5,000 towards paying down my mortgage because
They're close.
that's a guaranteed 7% rate of return. And I would rather have a guaranteed 7% return versus an expected 8%. So listen, regarding debt, essentially you need to assess the situation. I don't think it's fair to say that you should always avoid debt at all costs, because this is going to lead you to miss out on opportunities or optimizing your finances. And I think it's dangerous to tell people to load up on good debt because an excessive amount of debt brings excess risk. So my philosophy is that debt is always bad. However, if it's worth it, utilize the debt. If it's not, then don't. So take it as a case by case.
That's a solid case too, because it's like, man, there's no absolutes in a lot of this, right? It depends on your
Scenario.
situation.
Now, if you think that what I just said is simple, then I'll tell you that I do too. However, and surprisingly, this idea is revolutionary because I've never seen anyone else say this before or explain it like this. At least to my knowledge, if you've seen it, then please show me the video clip or the book in which it's written because I'd like to see. Because normally it's either one extreme or the other, but this is the way that I see it. So therefore, I'm telling you my book about building wealth. It's very simple, it's very straightforward, and it is revolutionary. It's gonna change lives. So listen, I wanna tell you this so you know where I'm coming from. So personally, I don't like debts. I hate owing people money. I don't even like owing people favors. I try to avoid debt, but I'm willing to take on debt if it makes sense. Now, in terms of bad debt or consumer debt, I don't need to lecture you on this. You already know it's a bad idea to pay for a vacation that you don't have the money for with a credit card. But when it comes to other common forms of debt, I'll tell you this. In my life, I've been in debt. In my younger years, I was in credit card debts. I've had an auto loan, I've had a mortgage, I've had a HELOC, I've had business loans. Yeah, but during all that time, I didn't like being in debt. I didn't want to be in debt, but when you have no money, what can you do? I'm just being realistic. Now, obviously you want to pay those off because again, all debt is bad. However, if you can find ways to be more productive with your money than paying down your debt, then I think that approach is okay. You must weigh the pros and cons. However, from experience, I want to tell you that if you're debt-free,
you got to weigh it out.
Is that your life financially is just so much more stress-free. Like the feeling of financial...
I'm telling you, I think that's one of the biggest things, right? Because it's like if you're sinking and you can't get out, man, that debt is just crazy.
No debt, it is just absolutely wonderful. It's truly hard to describe. Okay, so we covered the situation of should you prioritize paying down your debts or investing? But there's also going to be the situation of whether you should borrow money to make more money. So if you ask me, for example, Should you borrow money to go to college? Should you borrow money to start a business? Should you borrow money to invest in a rental property? Then my answer to you, it's either going to be, one of three. It's going to be one, a hard no, don't do it. Or two, it depends. Or three, yes, do it. Right? I mean, it's going to be one of those. And my answer is that it depends. It depends on the pros and cons. It's a case-by-case scenario. So it's not as simple as yes all the time or no all the time. And assessing each situation requires that you do your homework and your research. Good starting questions to answer are, how much will the debt cost? What's the expected payoff? What can go wrong? What's the likelihood that something's going to go wrong? And how much damage will you take if things go wrong? So I believe that's a good starting point.
Yeah, it's like knowing
So
the whole
personally, that is
picture.
my take on debt. It's a little bit different from Ramsey and Kiyosaki. If you enjoy my content,
Nah, interesting take, man. W vid, man. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit the next video on the screen.